What I'd like to do first is to explain how we run the show here. What we do is we have the Lisa will read the petition of the applicant, and after that, if the applicant would like to say more, it doesn't have to say anything, just let the case stand as it's presented. Then we would open it up for public discussion for those who might be in favor or in opposition to the presentation. And then we would cut off public discussion and the board would deliberate. So with that, Lisa, would you please?
This is an application for a finding, Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 40A, Section 9, Zoning Board of Appeals. The name and address of the applicants are Vincent and Susan Bisceglia, 139 Wharton Row, Groton, Mass. 01450. The undersigned hereby makes application as follows. Is seeking a finding that the conveyance of 394 square feet to the abutting property at 130 Sunset Lane from property owned at 136 Sunset Lane will not be more detrimental to the neighborhood. This action will create a safe situation for driveway access purposes. The proposed action has not begun. The basis for this application for finding is found in the following section of the Lunenburg zoning bylaw, Section 8321. The street address of the property is 136 Sunset Lane in Lunenburg, assesses map 126, parcel 4. The name and address of each holder of legal title to the land which is the subject of this case is Vincent C. and Susan M. Bisceglia, trustees of the Bisceglia Family Realty Trust. The deeds recorded in Worcester Northern District Registry of Deeds, Book 7647, page 9063, and recorded June 1st of 2012. On page 3, section 12, finding, they've answered the questions as follows. A, will not be injurious or dangerous to the public health or unduly hazardous because of traffic congestion, danger of fire or explosion or other reasons. Is seeking a safe situation for a driveway access at 136 Sunset Lane. The other 3 are non-applicable. It's signed the 3rd day of October of 2013 by Susan M. and Vincent Bisceglia, 139 Wharton Row in Groton. Attached is a plan done by David E. Ross Associates. There's a large plan as well on the table. And there's a list of abutters prepared by the Lunenburg Assessor's Office. And that's all, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Would the applicant like to expand on the presentation made?
Probably just to let you know that we...
Excuse me.
I'm Susan Bisceglia.
Well, that's okay. You have to, we're on TV, so for the enjoyment of the folks at home, you have to give your name and address and say what you please.
Good evening. I'm Susan Bisceglia, 139 Wharton Row, Groton, Massachusetts, and we're here on behalf of the property that we own at 136 and 150 Sunset Lane. And I just wanted to explain that we have owned 150 Sunset for many years now. My grandfather bought the property in 1940, and my father and his brother owned it, and then my husband and I bought it. The 136 property was also my grandfather's property, and he sold it to the Bolios in the 1960s. They're like family to us. We grew up down there as family. And when they sold it to us last spring, we realized that the cottage really was in disrepair and made the decision to tear it down and just build a garage. So we're going to be giving up our rights to rebuild at 136. So because of that property, as soon as we take down the existing cottage, that property line will go away between 136 and 150, and it'll become one lot. And we hope that you'll think what we think, that we're going to be making our house more conforming, our lot more conforming, and we will help the Suttons to make theirs more conforming by selling them a little piece of land that they have been using for their driveway access. And the driveway access, I don't know if you had a chance to look at it, but it's pretty steep. And for them to reconfigure their driveway would have been difficult. And that's why we're here, to help make it an easy, way for them to get out of their driveway onto Sunset Lane. Their driveway is quite a bit down from where Sunset is. So in order for them to make to get onto Sunset, they'd have to actually go up a hill, up a berm, to make a straight shot, because it's the only way they could have done it. And it doesn't look safe to me. And that's it.
I have a question.
Sure.
Because I might not clearly understand all of the nuances of what you're trying to achieve. The people who use the driveway, are they trespassing?
Yes.
In order to get,
Yeah.
it's a trespass situation.
It's a trespass situation.
But they probably could qualify, maybe, and I'm just proposing it, as adverse possession over the years.
No, because this is the second owner, and the Bolios had been telling them and the previous owner that they were on their property, so everyone knew they were on the property. It wasn't like someone didn't know they were on the
So an
property.
action has been taken periodically not to achieve open use of the property over the years. That's the question. Because if they were just using it and never restrained over the time, I'm begging the question
They were
of
told that
adverse possession.
They were told that the property belonged to the Bolios when the Bolios owned it, and they were told that the property belonged to us when we bought it a year ago. So everyone always knew that it was the Bolio property. And the Bolios allowed them to have the right-of-way, but it was their property. So that's why it's not adverse possession.
I just raised the issue in that the question is there attempt to quiet deeds here? That was my follow-up question, depending upon what the answer was.
Right, no.
Okay,
No.
all right. I just wanted to...
Right, no.
in my
No,
mind.
we're just trying to help a neighbor. We're just trying to make it easier for them. And that's all.
Okay, fair
Okay.
enough.
Thank
Could
you.
I just ask
I
a
have a
question?
question, too.
Just while you're there, just for clarification.
Sure.
Looking at this, and I think it's because of the topography of the land you're talking about, that the driveway needs to be in this location.
Right.
Because they do have a lot of frontage along the road.
They do.
So it is strictly the
Because of the elevation.
topography of the land that makes
Exactly.
the driveway.
There's a big berm that is built up at the edge of Sunset along their property. And there, want me to show you pictures? I have a few photos. Would that be helpful?
I would. I didn't have the opportunity
Okay.
to get there, so I would.
I didn't either. I only got it.
This is the house it's going to.
Pass it.
Okay, so that's basically the
Where
tree.
that current
That's where
driveway.
they cut across, because
Yeah.
of the difference in height, yep.
Show me much.
Okay. Pass the other stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, I take this one.
So I still don't understand where this driveway is that you're talking about.
To the left of the mailbox. This is the driveway. And,
It's a big berm
so
here.
this is the berm.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Now I. Thank you, those pictures did help, thank you.
Okay. At this, we'll get time for questions later. I just want to formally get through the public discussion. So I'll open it up for public discussion. Anybody here that would like to speak in favor of the applicant, you please come forward and give your name and address, and so be it.
Hello. I'm April Sutton. I'm the owner of 130 Sunset Lane. And my husband and I are in agreement with the Michelius. I'm sorry. Any questions for me?
Okay, well, we'd like your opinion, and that's what you're for. If
Okay.
there's any further questions, the board would ask them at the appropriate time, okay?
Okay.
And thank you very
Thank you.
much. Would anybody else like to speak in behalf? Okay, anybody who would like to speak in opposition? Hearing none, I'm going to close off public discussion. And with that, we open it up to the board. Gentlemen, I guess we're all men today. Sometimes it's gentle people. So with that, who would like to kick off the discussion?
I'll start. Anybody else wants to? I guess that one of the questions that it raised in my mind was the size of the lot that they're on, but I think that I feel more comfortable with that because you had mentioned when you spoke that you are actually joining those two lots into one. Is that right? And is that a formal thing? Is that being recorded as such, or it is?
I,
Take down the cottage, which we're going to do as soon as we hear from you what the decision is. It'll automatically merge. That line will go away. Because we're going to be taking down the cottage, and once that happens, it'll merge. It'll become one lot.
Well, I'm not so sure that that's the case. It doesn't automatically happen.
I have a comment if you're ready.
But if it's going to be recorded as one lot, as a part of this transfer of the 394 square feet, that should be a part of it. Because, and the reason I'm asking is that one of the concerns I have that these are non-conforming lots down there in that they don't have the square footage that is required by our bylaws. And that's fine, it's a pre-existing non-conforming use, but the concern I have is by deeding the 394 square feet, if that's the number I think it was, then it makes that lot less conforming, which is something that it is contrary to what we have for a necessary finding. In addition to not being without substantial detrimental to the public good, we also have to be concerned without nullifying or substantially derogating from the intent and purpose of the bylaw. As I said, the intent and purpose of the bylaw is to have conforming lots, and if it's making it less conforming, then we have to consider that. So again, my question is, by joining those lots into one as a part of this transfer, actually you are making a more conforming lot, even though it still lacks the total square footage. And so that, to me, is a plus. But I want to, you mentioned that it's automatic, and I don't think it's automatic, from my understanding.
I would say that in preliminary discussions, it has been presented to me, not to the board, of course, because I have to formulate all of this information, and it's my understanding that the common lot merger doctrine executes by definition if they're in common ownership. They have their rights independent as long as you do that, but the minute you tear the house down and it's owned by the same person, that the common law merger doctrine executes upon that action. But you could challenge that, of course, but that's the understanding that I have. But you've got good knowledge and background in that area, and I would yield to your...
Well, I'll state very quickly that I am not an attorney, but I am in real estate, and so I think that as a part of that transfer, because there has to be a transfer of that 394 feet, and as a part of that, if it's to merge these two lots and have it recorded as such, that solves my concern.
And just on that point, and it's a timing problem, and I don't think it for general purposes, I own two lots when I bought my property, and in 1976 you had 5 years to build on it, because they're both pre-existing non-conforming. And on the date that came forward of a common lot merger doctrine came into being, back then you had 5 years, but subsequent that if it's both owned and not separate, it executes as under one single lot, so I obviously lost my lot in that regard because of the common lot merger doctrine. Executed, and I never had to do any recording in that time. It just got executed by definition of the law.
Mr. Chairman, that happened to me as well, but my question, just to follow up to you, Mr. Chairman, on that is, that happened over a 5-year period.
That was-
Without what Ray is talking about, wouldn't that be a same extended time period?
The time beyond that, once you had the grace period when they indoctrinated the common law merger doctrine, they gave, you had a 5-year buffer. Once the 5 years is gone, then in marching forward, when you do that, the common law merger doctrine executes, and this is what I'm saying, is based on preliminary work in assembling the data. It is my understanding that it executes just upon the tearing of the house down.
So there is no longer a time period.
That is my understanding. However, I defer to Ray because, like I say, you could qualify if you would agree that be a condition that it is indeed executed, whether it's executed instantaneously or not. So I defer to.
Well, I would feel more comfortable if we had that as a condition, because, you know, in my profession, it's document, document, document. And without the documentation,
Yeah, I would have no problem as to make it a condition, because then it resolves the issue which side, whether it was instantaneous or recorded. If you would agree to the request in the first place.
Well, as I said in my remarks, I feel more comfortable knowing that the intent of this is to make it one lot. And that one lot will be larger than the lot that you have a house on now. So that's a plus. And so I don't have a concern with that, because I think with that assumption, and then I feel comfortable in what I see as the necessary 4 findings in order to satisfy the special permit. And this section that is referenced is to grant a special permit. And they're embedded in that 4 necessary findings, the way I read it. And so I feel comfortable that it will not nullify or substantially derogate from the intent and the purpose of the bylaw. Simply, it's making it more conforming.
Okay, and the next point, of course, is, which is part of it, is the transfer of the small sections of the lot, which would
Make that lot more conforming, too.
Yeah, and we'd need a finding in that, and advice of counsel, again, offline, but that we should, in order to substantiate it, is that the board would consider making a finding that the transfer of the property, albeit creating a more non-conforming lot, but enhancing another lot, would not be detrimental to the neighborhood. And that was the suggestion, talking offline.
Well,
So that that it'd be important that we rule on the finding in that regard.
well, I think that we are obligated to make a finding in all 4 cases. One being that the permit would be granted without substantial detriment to the public good, and it, without nullifying or substantially derogating from the intent of the purpose of the bylaw, and the specific site is appropriate for the buildings, and all of these things are outlined here.
That sounds like a motion.
I'll make a motion if you'd like.
You know? The chair will entertain a motion.
Well, does anybody else have any comments?
We'll get further discussion. Can I have a second to the motion, or do you want discussion prior to that?
Doesn't make any difference in my mind. I
If
think
it doesn't,
we're going to have it one way or the other,
we'll have the discussion anyway.
right?
So who seconds the motion?
Second.
So we have a second. We have a motion on the table, but now we'll open for further discussion.
So that would, in my opinion, if we add all 4 pieces, there are 2 for 136 and 2 for 150. According to this, it would come out to around 1.32 acres, minus that, which is about a tenth of an acre, making the total combined lots, one lot of around 1.2 acres, which 1 1/4 is fairly reasonable. But does that preclude that we, if you're going to build a garage, there would have to be other conditions that would be met? You may have to apply for a special permit for building a garage on that.
It's, the lot loses its identity upon the common, the merger doctrine. So what was 2 lots is no longer 2 lots. So if you have 2 lots, it becomes one pure lot. And then by right, they would have the right to put a garage on their 1 lot. Just as I could put a garage on mine, so long as I keep within the side yard requirements. And in this case, that would be the, they could put it, since it's not attached to the house, assuming it's not attached to the house, it would be 5 foot from the lot line, if my memory serves me correct.
But again, that's, the garage is really not before us at this point.
No, it isn't, but
I mean,
Right, that was
it's
just
up
gonna-
to them if they, and if they build an inspected, site to reason, well, then they'll be back. But other than that, we should be fine.
they'll have to discuss that with Mike or Savageau
Yeah,
at that
correct,
time
yeah.
if they decide to move forward.
I believe that there are no issues if the common if it merges and they now have the right to put a garage, just as you would on your lot. If you decided to put a garage unattached, you could do that, right? As a matter of right, getting the building permit. Yeah. Okay. Further discussion.
None.
Lisa, would you read the proposed?
Would you like to borrow the book?
Ray Beal made a motion that the specific site is these 4 specifically? The specific site is an appropriate location for such building or alteration.
No, above that, too.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, ma'am.
A finding that the permit may be granted without special detriment to the public good and without nullifying or substantially derogating from the intent and purpose of the bylaw. Is that it?
Continue.
And the specific site is an appropriate location for such buildings or alteration. Proposed building or alteration is compatible with the existing neighborhood with regard to size, location, and architecture. The granting of the special permit would not adversely affect the neighborhood. The granting of the special permit will not unreasonably diminish the available light, air, sunlight, or other amenities, and there shall be no nuisance or serious hazard to the vehicles or pedestrians. And the motion was seconded by Al Gravel.
Okay, no further discussion, and then all those in favor of granting the special permit as outlined, please say aye.
Aye.
And are those in opposition? Hearing none, this board is granting that. Few things I have to say. Granting the special permit, the Board of Appeals shall assure and did assure that the action would not be injurious or dangerous to the public health or unduly hazardous because of traffic congestion, danger, or fire explosions. It would not have a material adverse effect on the value of the land and the buildings in the neighborhood or in the amenities thereof. The others, two that we have to do, or have to deal with things that are beyond the operated and reasonable regard. Of course, that would probably be related to the building inspector in terms of the construction in accordance with the requirements. And the other is, since it's on a lake, it might be difficult that it would not produce noise, vibration, smoke, or dust in the party atmosphere. But that seems not to apply. The special authorization is granted with the contingency that the petitioner comply with all licenses, regulations, statutes, and ordinances of any and all applicable state, local, and federal boards or agencies with jurisdictions over the premises. That covers us pretty good, I think. In granting the special permit, it shall inure to the benefit of the applicant, and the special permit, through the construction, of course, would be subject to periodic review by the granting authority, and that would be the zoning and enforcing officer and this board, and if it became a problem. You should be advised that you should record this with the Registry of Deeds, and that goes along with what Ray says. Independent of what I might have said, recording is so important. And it will take about 13 days before the permit is granted. Anybody can appeal the decision of this board to Superior Court within 20 days from the date it hits the clerk's office, so you should be aware of that in case you take an action prior to that 20-day period that is exposed. And with that, we wish you well.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Well done.
Okay, we made it within 4 minutes. Thank you, Ray, for your good formulation. I got new batteries in my hearing aids, and they just and they retrim my hearing aids, and I hear stuff I'd never heard before. I mean, this sounds like the walls are coming in.
On the air.
Welcome. We got business done already prior to you coming. Ready to go forward.
We're still on the air.
Yeah, I guess we're still, but that's okay. Yeah. You're on the air, so I'm sure that. Okay. We've got 2 minutes before we can start this meeting. It appears we're on the air, so we'll just pause for a moment or two.
Hey, Don, here's your agenda.
Okay, we're online. Well, that's similar to the one I have, thank you.
How's it going, Dan?
Okay, this is a continuation of the meeting for the application of 40B, and we have our itinerary that's been scheduled to do, and the issues that will be covered will be an update from the applicant. There has been background discussions, understanding, to understand, and report of council, the sewer commission, and the civil engineering peer review update. So that would be the area. I would like to see if Dick would want to crystallize some of the subject matter that we will cover tonight a little in depth to where we've been, because you have background discussions which I think we ought to sharpen our thought process.
I think, Mr. Chairman, that I've been keeping notes of all the action items and things that were available and things that the board was requesting the applicant to prepare. And I think after tonight's meeting, there will, all of the information, with the exception of the review of the pro forma, will have been provided to the board. So one of the key issues for the board this evening is that if there is any other information that the board would like, it would be important to point it out tonight in preparation of the meeting November 14th, where the board will have the option to close the hearing.
November 13th.
Thank you. November 13th. The board will have the option to close the hearing and then work on the decision for the next 40 days. I'm not presupposing that's what you want to do, but I think the issue is if there are any other action items that you want the applicant to respond to, it would be important to point them out tonight.
Okay, we appreciate that. And so who would like to, of all of those people that are going to feed back information, who would like to step forward for the moment? We'll get
Good
it.
evening, Mr. Chairman.
We'll get it all in here one way or another.
I guess we will. For the record, Paul Haverty from Rignante, Storio, and Osborne, representing the applicant. I think possibly a good starting point would to go over the peer review that's gone back and forth. I know that the board's peer review engineer, Jesse Johnson, has provided a peer review report. There was a response issued from our engineer, Wes Fliss, and I think a response to that response came in yesterday from Jesse. So I don't know if you want Wes to go over the peer review, if you want to start with Jesse, it's up to you.
Well, we got to get there one way or another.
We're going to get there one way or the other.
Okay.
What's your fancy?
I'm open.
I would suggest we do it as short as possible.
All right, why don't we have Wes, we'll skip Jesse's initial, and we'll start with Wes's response, and we'll get to the end
All
quickly.
right, so Jesse, if there's anything that you feel is not addressed by Wes, would you bring it up?
Absolutely. Just an official copy of the letter.
Thank you. Do we have, the other members have privy to this information?
You have it.
Oh, I have it under here. Oh, okay, so I've got it here.
All that was is a copy,
date
official
on that?
copy of my October 16th letter.
October 16th.
Okay.
Just for the record, Wesley Fliss, Whitman and Bingham Associates. On October 14th, which was last Monday, we received a letter from Mr. Johnson from Ross Associates, just reviewing basically the entire project under his review of the project. A couple days later, we sent back a response letter, basically saying how we're going to address each item. A lot of the items are going to be addressed on the final design plans, as we would call them. A couple of the items that we would have the board condition, and a couple of the items that we would leave open for the water department basically to have the final say on, as we continue to work with the water department on the connections to the water system. That being said, Mr. Johnson wrote a letter yesterday just stating that he agrees with majority of the items being addressed in the final plans. He had 4 items that he wanted to make sure that got taken care of, or that he wanted to make sure adjustments were made with regards to our answers. The first item I had to do with the testing within the basins. We had already done testing out there as part of the original submittal on this project. And so I'll show the test hole locations on the final plan. If the testing doesn't end up being in all 3 basins, we will submit the data that Mr. Johnson was looking for in the manner that he's looking for it, also within the time frame. It was just to make sure that the testing was done sooner than later with regards to the process of the project. So if in case any minor adjustments need to be made to the basin because of the testing, those adjustments can be made now and not later on while the construction's really going full steam ahead. And so we have no issue with that, that item. The next item on Mr. Johnson's letter from October 22nd had to do with the spacing of the impervious barriers within the drain line. They felt strongly that because of the way the drain line was and because of the short run the drain line is within the connector road, which connects Pleasant View to Piedmont Avenue, that the spacing of the impervious dam should be at 150-foot interval. We had just given a reason why we had shown 300 feet originally. He still thinks because of the short run, it should be 150 feet on the drain line only. The sewer line is fine for 300 feet. Again, for the short run there it is, probably about 3 dams that we're looking at, 3 impervious barriers. So again, we have no issue with the request there. Item number 5 was a clarification with regards to the construction of Pleasant View Avenue. After we had submitted our October 16th letter, I know Jack Waterquins from the DPW had made a comment regarding to what extent Pleasant View Avenue had to be brought to before the pavement was going to be taking place on Pleasant View Avenue. And so we made sure in email format back to Mr. Waterquins that we were still under the same agreement that we were under the previous approval by this board on how Mr. Lorden was basically bringing the road up to standards right before pavement would happen. And
Did
so
you get a response to that?
Yeah, and Mr. Waterquins was fine with it, and then Jesse just made sure that, that was worded correctly, I guess, with regards to the approval, or the condition of approval from the ZBA, to make sure that that wording is similar in what it was before, just so it's very clear what Mr. Lorden's responsibilities are and what the town's responsibilities are with regards to that pavement. Again, we don't have an issue with it. We've already made that, Mr. Lorden's already made the concession prior, and he's still holding to that concession now. So the wording of that is we have no issues with. And then number 6 had to do with the traffic study and a couple of things that Ross Associates was requesting to be added either to the plans or to the traffic study in either the office that I work for or the gentleman that did this traffic analysis will provide that information that Mr. Johnson's looking for. And it might not be necessarily on the final design plans. It might be in a document or with regards to really how the conditions were worded to. And I think that was some of the things that in the traffic report it recommended doing some site cleaning up with regards to the Pleasant View and Piedmont Avenue intersections when they come out onto, I believe it's Summer Street. And so just make sure that those corners are cleaned up. And the recommendations are made in the traffic report, and I think as part of the conditions of approval, I think that can kind of be carried along as part of the approval from the ZBA, kind of help clean some of that up a little bit too. And I don't know if Mr. Johnson wants to touch on that too, but like I said, the information that he's requesting, we have no problem giving him that information. And like I said, it might not come from our office, it might come from the traffic engineer's office, but he will get that information that he's looking for to make sure that those intersections are safer than they are actually today, and hopefully that we can kind of make that as good of a situation as we can. We know the angles over there are tough with regards when you come out from Piedmont Avenue onto Summer Street, and obviously we'll work as best as we can with the DPW on trying to clean that section up as much as we can. So other than that, like I said, basically everything's going to be cleaned up within the final design plans. There weren't a lot of issues that we saw there. Just a couple details, a couple notes on the plans and so forth that need to be added. And then a couple, like I said, coordination issues with the water department, make sure that we take care of the Leominster and the Lunenburg water departments to make sure that they're happy with how the water connection happens with the water system. So other than that, I don't know if...
Well, I guess what we need to know, if everything you presented is there, are we in perfect harmony
Yeah, and that's
at
what-
this point, so let's see if there's any differentiation so that we're coming close to the ends of meetings, so we want to be sure that there is 100% agreement on the assumption if there was approval to proceed.
Sure. For the record, Jesse Johnson, David Ross Associates. And as Wes clarified, I did review everything as far as civil design standards. I had some comments for them to address, and I thought that they either in plan form or as conditions of the approval could address those rather easily. I thought overall the utilities were designed in general conformance with standard engineering practice. I felt as though the drainage design met stormwater standards for Massachusetts. I just had some minor things that I wanted to add into either conditions or on the plans to clarify and make sure that what gets constructed is what is being as promised. One clarification on one of the items that was just mentioned regarding the impervious barriers and installation of them. I just wanted to make sure, my comment was to make sure at least one barrier is put on every connection to each of the 3 basins. There's 3 basins that are designed. They have a system of pipes that are connected going to each one, and 2 of them are very short runs. I wanted to make sure at least one dam got put somewhere on those runs, and then as Wes had mentioned, it would probably be 3 dams on the longer run. And Wes just mentioned the 3. I want to make sure that the other ones each got 1 dam at least, and that's in my comments.
Has that been resolved?
It's one of those things where my condition is that it doesn't have to be shown on the plan, but it needs to be shown on the as-built. So as long as they know they need to do it, and the as-built is double-checked after, they have to show that it's there. If it's not, then they would have to.
Are they in agreement at this point in time? In other words, we need to know if there are no issues, or is there maybes or ifs, to clarify that they don't exist, that whatever you propose and whatever is agreed to is done, and there are no issues outstanding that we have to deal with.
we have no issue with that. What we'll do is we'll add them to the final design plans. There's a couple of other issues that'll be on the final design plans with details, and so we'll make sure they're on the design plan, and they'll show up on the as-built plan afterwards also.
So you're in agreement?
We're fine with that issue. Yep.
Go ahead.
And then to clarify also, as Wes had mentioned about the potential traffic improvements or sightline improvements at the intersections that have been a big concern, as it was mentioned at the last meeting, in relation to the roadway width that's out there, that it's not up to standard, there's not much you can do about it. The same thing is true for these intersections that these connector roads come onto. The sight lines are not up to standard, but there's not much you can do that's in the control of the towns. You can do trimming and you can do work within the right-of-way as best you can, and I just wanted to make sure, as it was suggested by their traffic consultant, that selective trimming within the right-of-way could be done to improve it. It won't make it up to the standard necessary, but it'll at least improve the condition, that gets shown on the design plans and that gets followed through upon.
And the cost burden is borne by whom?
I would assume it would be by the applicant, even though it's in the right-of-way, just like anything else. If you're tying into a...
No, I understand, but we're talking about in between town property and the site itself, so if there's some things that have to do because of the geometry of what exists, and what is probably not the best as it stands now. The question is, when to get to the resolution of it, and you're saying do something to the best that you can, if I'm listening to you correct.
Right.
Well, there's a cost associated with that, and the question is who's prepared to pick up the burden. Town budgets are difficult to say the least. So you're going to end up with a product, with the end point of the product is what is the cost associated with it, and who picks up the burden.
Mr. Chairman, what I think we're discussing is simply trimming of vegetation to create better sight lines. The cost of that isn't going to be substantial, and my client certainly wouldn't object to paying that. We're going to need to be able to work with the DPW to be given the permission to actually go onto the right-of-way. And
Did you say you're going to do it?
I'm saying that we're willing to do it, that the cost associated with that is not much.
All right.
We're not talking
You
about
understand what I'm saying.
redesigning the roadway, we're just talking about clearing vegetation so that when you're pulling out, you can see what's coming.
But a cost is a cost.
There's a cost, and we're happy to
We need
bear
the
that
information to
cost.
say what are the plan routes.
Just presuming, though, that the DPW will give us the permission to go on there and do that.
I understand.
Thank you.
Okay.
And that was essentially it. Everything else I felt they could address in plan form or as a condition of approval.
All right. Then that takes care of that issue. Does any members of the board have any outstanding thoughts on the matter, or are we saying we've satisfied that? And I might want to go to Dan Hill to see if there's any side issues or forward issues. Please, Dan.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. And for the record, contrary to myth, I did not get in a fight with the 40B developer. I banged my head while I was landscaping my house this weekend. I had a few follow-up questions for Jesse and for Wes. Just on, first of all, does anyone up here understand what is being discussed about these dams? I mean, I've never heard this before. I don't really understand what this is. Would you mind explaining what you're talking about in that comment?
Sure. My concern was any utilities that are installed in groundwater, they have to have a stone or sand bedding around the utility so that it immediately becomes a conduit to carry groundwater down the channel along the pipe, and then could potentially go around a structure and then ultimately, especially with detention basins, dump into the detention basin. So you're now getting not only surface water that it's designed for, but you're getting the intrusion of groundwater, which it is not designed for. So what you can do is you can put impervious barriers periodically along that stone. It covers the pipe and then just flares out to the width of the excavation. And it's essentially a square donut that prevents the water from flowing down that channel to bypass it and holds it back. So you put those down periodically, so you're just stopping any groundwater that's coming in along the stoneway from proceeding down into the basin.
Does this also resolve the issues if you've done it for the folks that are not in the town, that have been subjected to overflow of water onto their property? And it was, if I understand it correct, it was suggested that the management of groundwater would be by the time when you build the project, that would be well managed and not problematic. Am I on the right page in terms of this discussion? It sounds like I am.
They're a little bit different. This is more of preventing groundwater from infiltrating one of the BMPs that's only designed for surface water. It could potentially also channel the groundwater and act like a wick in that surrounding area, but if you have the dams in, then it's not. It's just going to have everything stabilized so that, in theory, everything that's flowing the way it's naturally flowing now is going to continue to go that way, and it's not going to have some conduit to go elsewhere. The people that have groundwater issues now are going to continue to have groundwater issues. That's just nothing you can do about it other than locally around their individual homes.
Two different areas. This is for
okay.
the one down below,
Okay.
where the extra houses are. And the question I think that you were asking pertains more to the upper one, where there are only 4 houses that we're looking at, and he was not changing any of the plans.
You're in agreement with his thought process?
If I understood you, you were asking more of some of the concerns that were raised by abutters in the groundwater issues?
Yes, I was.
Yeah.
And then
This won't help that.
That's not on that issue, just so I
Right.
understand.
It's a
it.
separate matter completely.
Yeah.
They're both groundwater matters, but they're not interrelated.
All right. Sorry, Dan.
Can you show us on the plan where these pipes are that are going to be in the groundwater?
Wes probably could show better than me.
We're talking the new section, which would be right there, and the pipes here.
And where's the detention basin?
There's 3 basins.
Okay, so the pipes, these are pipes that are collecting stormwater in the street through catch basins, and then conveying the water eventually to the basins. And in some locations, these pipes will be under the groundwater, high-level groundwater. And what you're saying is that the dams will prevent the groundwater from entering the basins?
Correct.
Is that scientifically proven?
That's just common construction practice. That's the best preventive measure to put that in.
But does that prevent it completely, or is there still?
There's always a chance it could be bypassed, or if it's not put in properly, certainly. But this is the best available method that they recommend out there.
So to make sure it's done, to make sure it's installed correctly, would you advise that we have an engineering firm inspect the installation of these pipes as they're being constructed?
I think as a general recommendation for the whole overall project, it would be to the benefit of the town to have some type of periodic inspection done on the entire project. If you're going to rely on the sewer and the water departments to do the inspections on their utilities, then I think you would have to, I'm sure the DPW doesn't have the staff to come up here and inspect drainage and stormwater controls, but I would certainly recommend that those get inspected periodically, because it's one thing to put it on a piece of paper and have calculations that support it, but it's a whole other thing if it doesn't get installed properly.
Right. I guess, and so I guess, you know, I'm thinking just as a non-engineer, but I'm thinking that it might make sense to have a firm like yourself inspect these at the exact point which they're constructed, but yet haven't been covered up.
Oh, yeah.
So that you can see that the dams have been put in correctly, so that it will hopefully prevent the groundwater from...
Oftentimes what you do, because you don't want to hold contractors up if you can prevent it, you allow them to put in long runs of pipe or structures, and you just say leave the top exposed, and basically you go and make sure that the joint was correctly made, that it's a straight line. You look down the pipe to see that it's a nice open pipe, that there's no belly anywhere in it. So that you just have to work with the contractor to make sure that they get a lot of work in, but they call you and give you enough time so you can go out and do that inspection before they backfill it.
Okay. And then I was just curious, when I saw your note about some of the house foundations will also be below the high groundwater level, and then these pipes will be as well. It struck me as, I mean, I've never seen that actually in all the projects I've worked on. I've never actually seen buildings under the groundwater. And I'm just wondering, are there any standards in the DEP stormwater handbook that regulate or cover drainage pipes? I mean, I know that basins have to be, 2 feet above high level?
Yeah, it's more of a building department issue. If you have a foundation that is going to be in the groundwater at all, you have to put some type of foundation drain in. And obviously, you have to be able to daylight it, or you have to put it into a dry well. They don't have the opportunity for dry wells here because of the groundwater elevation. So they have to daylight it somewhere. And given that they have some of these houses in the interior, they chose to do interconnecting foundation drains to daylight them off to the side away from the houses, which is fine. I can see that being put in as long as every homeowner is aware of those foundation drains being on their property where they are in an easement, because you could have 3 or 4 houses connected, and one upstream could get impacted if one downstream for some reason puts in their sprinkler system or puts in a pool or something and breaks that pipe. Mm-hmm. So they're all interconnected. I just made the general note that to make sure easements associated with them are created, and that all the homeowners have the ability to know where they are.
Okay, I want to get to that point in a second, but just going back to the drainage pipes. So there's nothing in DEP's regulations or standards that regulate that. I mean, they allow pipes to be submerged, essentially. They allow drainage pipes to be under the groundwater.
Correct.
But the basins themselves have to be at least 2 feet above groundwater, right?
The basins have to be at least 2. The bottom of the basin has to be minimum 2. And then depending on the size storm event that you're designing for within it has to be 4. And they've designed them at 4. So
okay.
They've gone above the minimum standard.
So the bottom of their basins is at least 4 feet above the seasonal high groundwater?
Correct.
Okay. And one of your notes dealt with the test pit locations, and I heard Wes say that they've already done test pits. Just so I understand, what exactly, so it says soil evaluations were done. What does that mean? Does that mean that you confirmed the soil types?
That's half of it. The other half, and probably the bigger component, is confirming the groundwater elevation. Given the soil testing that they've already provided, it was consistent on the soil type, and it was fairly consistent on the groundwater elevation. So I don't expect a big deviation, but to be in compliance with stormwater regs, they're actually supposed to have at least one in each
Right.
area that's going to infiltrate. So they'll provide that, and then I just suggested that that be done before any tree clearing is actually done.
Right.
So in the event that there's a significant change that needs to happen, that can be taken care of and redesigned before any trees are taken down.
Right. And the, what about the infiltration rate? Was that also done as part of the, as part of the tests?
You have to actually pick it on a soil type. You can't use a perk test. We used to do that in the past, but with the updated changes, you have a soil type, and then based on that, they give you a chart that you select your infiltration rate.
Okay,
at.
I think we talked about that before. It's actually more conservative than...
Much more conservative,
Okay.
yeah.
All right, so your recommendation would be that they show the location of the soil tests on the design plans that have to be approved by this board. We crafted this condition in the original permit where the final design plans have to be approved by this board before they can start construction. And so that would be what you would recommend.
Right.
To make sure that you're satisfied that the soil tests were done in the locations of the basins.
Correct. That, and as well as some of the other things that they said in their letter that they would provide. I asked for a detail specific to shallow utility installations and some of the other things. So I would just go.
Jumping the gun.
What's that?
Prevents jumping the gun.
Right. Which we had an issue with before, so I want to make sure that doesn't happen again.
Learn lessons.
Right. So, I mean, I guess I'm a little curious why we don't know where the soil tests are. And why, I mean, can you tell us, Wes, where they were? Are they in the location of the basins, or?
Yeah, that might not be, what he's talking about is this part of the basin is the infiltration part of the basin. When we went out there originally, before we had this plan drafted, under the old design. We threw in 3 tests along the way, but I'm not quite sure if we have the location right in the infiltration area of the basin itself. So that's the question. So what I have to do is I have to overlay a couple maps onto each other, because
Okay.
when we had done the old plan, we had pulled off by some of the control we had out there just by hand.
Okay, so if they're not in that area, then you'd have to go back out there and do them?
Just pop a deep hole, yeah, just
Right.
to make sure what the groundwater depth is.
Okay.
It's
All right.
relatively a quick item to do with a backhoe, and taking half a day at the most probably to poke a couple holes in the ground, make sure the groundwater depth is at a certain altitude.
Okay, and if those numbers change for some reason, then you'd have to,
Bring the basin up a couple inches if you have to. Okay. We were looking at about 27 inches, maybe 30 inches, if I remember correctly, for groundwater depth. So anything higher than that's going to be maybe 24 inches. We're not talking a huge deviance there.
okay. So just going back to the house foundations, and I, you know, like I said, I don't have any experience with this, and so the state building code, there's nothing in the state building code that would prohibit somebody from putting a house foundation in groundwater.
No, actually, it happens all the time. Sometimes you just can't avoid it.
Okay.
It's just whatever preventive measures you want to build into the house, whether you have some interior type of drainage system, or you just do a French drain on the outside perimeter and daylight it. It's really up to the builder and then the homeowner educating themselves of what they're getting into.
So is that something that we should be conditioning in this permit if the board approves this? I mean, should we have conditions that require a specific method of dealing with this issue, or should we just leave it up to the state
It's really at the discretion, I think, of the builder and then the homeowner.
and the building inspector to enforce the building code?
Right.
If I could, just to help put your mind at ease,
Okay.
it is something that it's a building department thing, and the building regulations call for, unless you're in 2-minute soils, that you have to have some type of drainage out to daylight or mechanical drainage. But just to put your mind at ease, for all of our homes that we build, I go above and beyond the call of duty for drainage because I don't like water. We stone the entire 1 foot of our footing. So inside the entire house, which most people don't do, we stone the inside of the house, and we put weep holes in the footings. That way there, if water would arise in any situation, it will take its least course of resistance. It'll hit the stone, leaches through, hits the weep holes, goes out to the perimeter drain, and then exits to daylight. The other thing that having stone in a footing will also do for you is it's a nice situation if you were to encounter radon gas, because at that point you simply just put a pipe in the corner, and the same principle occurs. It pulls the gases from the stone, and then you mechanically vent it up through your roof line. So on all of our homes, whether it's in this subdivision or wherever we build a home, it's a standard procedure for us to stone the inside of a footing and the outside of a footing.
I have a quick side question. On the radon, is that in this area a high issue of radon?
It varies from place to place,
So-
from town to town. It's really, we haven't had high experience of having it in Lunenburg. Other places in New Hampshire, it's quite prevalent, places like that, and it varies from lot to lot. So, but we're always prepared for it, and it's a situation, again, it's more of a building item, that's more on the home end, home inspection end.
I understand.
So we're always prepared for it in the case that it does occur.
All right.
And we take it down to 0.
Hey, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I had a quick question. How do you daylight this water from being below grade to above grade?
They would end up having it, they showed it daylighting in between the basins towards the wetlands.
Is it a pump?
No, just by gravity. They would have to have a gravity flow. So
Right,
they'd-
but that's what I'm saying. The pipes are below grade, this is 2 feet above grade. How does the water get from here to up here?
Well, they'll end up chasing it down till they get to some point where they will have it daylight below the grade that they started at the last house.
So the pipe rises then? to
No,
get up?
it'll be, let's say your footings are 4 feet in the ground, they're gonna have to, whatever that elevation is, and the pipe is at that, they're gonna have to get to some point X amount of feet away, we had a minimum slope of 0.5 to 1%, they're gonna have to get it down and maybe 8 feet deep at that point, relative to that same elevation. But they'll have to chase it down till they can find a lower grade to get that pipe to come out to daylight.
And if that lower grade is below the bottom of the retention basin, how does it get from there to there?
It doesn't, I don't want it in the retention basin, so it's actually gonna be separate, it's gonna go outside of the basin. It's gonna go directly overland flow.
Go across lawns and whatever?
No, it's gonna be in the, towards the wetlands, in that same area of the drainage infrastructure.
And there will be no pumps required in the basement to do this? It's going to flow?
As an expense, they would wanna do it by gravity, they don't want any moving parts. So yeah, they should be able to make it work.
So the wetlands become an asset in that regard.
Yes, and it's clean water, so I mean, it's not in danger of any dirty water that you put in the wetlands or anything like that. And that's not unusual practice. You see a lot of, my house has one that daylights towards the wetlands. It's common.
Mr. Chairman, so again, on that issue, that's going to entail a separate network of pipes in this section of the development that's going to connect not all the houses, but several of the houses are going to be connected to this network of pipes that'll then carry the water to the wetlands. When will that piping be installed? Is that going to be installed at the same time the drainage piping is installed or later?
Not sure, but I would think so.
That will be installed right towards the front, like with the road. So what they would do is anything that has to go across the road, they'd put a stub. And that pipe will be larger because obviously the more homes you put into it, you may have to start with a 4-inch pipe around the foundation, but the piping will gradually increase to handle the flow of the cumulative water. But obviously you can't do that piping after the road is in, so it would be, they would put a stub to a point, and then we would create an easement so that the homeowners would be aware when they're purchasing it, so it would be recorded in the deed.
So when you, so then when you go to build the house, that stub's going to be there.
The main stub will be there.
And then
And then as we build them, it will behoove us, obviously, to run it right across as we can. We'd probably, what I would like to do.
Excuse me, your precious words, the public is anxious to hear it.
So the main thing is to put the stub, the large stub, across the street so that you can manifold these homes in together with it. It would greatly depend upon the series in which the homes were sold. You know, is A sold before C or is C sold before A? And if you had to put a series of foundations in to get it across. But if you sold the furthest lot up, then obviously you'd have to put all of it in to get to it. But if you sold the first house, it would make sense just to do the first house, leave the stub end open on the next lot for it to go. But then if you didn't sell the next lot, but you sold the next one, you would have to continue it, you know, as you would go. But it wouldn't make sense to put it all in at once. because it probably would get damaged during construction. But you definitely would put the main manifold in across the street.
Thank you.
So the reason I ask these questions is it's going to go to the issue of inspections and the post-permit condition that's going to say when.
Inspections are done by the building department.
Yeah, again.
When you're doing a drain, the building inspector inspects the foundation, the proper sealing of the foundation, and one of the most important things, he inspects where it drains, and to make sure that the perimeter drain is installed properly, that it's installed with pitch, that it's going to daylight out. So the building inspector takes care of those inspections.
I'm talking about the inspections of the road. So when the road and the utilities are inspected by the engineering firm.
Correct.
Will this pipe be in the road?
Yes.
It has to be, right?
Yes.
So, okay.
Yes.
All right, and then, Mr. Chairman, my last question is on the subgrade of Pleasant View, and I'm a little confused as to where we are in this because we have an email from Jack saying that subgrade is not good enough, that he wants finished grade.
Right.
But then I thought I heard Wes say that what they're willing to do is subgrade, and that was satisfactory. So I need to have language that I can write into the decision that's concrete, that there's no argument over
It's just the problem is that a lot of times, more or less like slang is used, where they'll say, bring it to subgrade and then you pave it. But the real true definition before paving is, it's a finish grade, which means when you finish grading it, it has the proper pitch, and simply all the paving contractor at that point has to come in and do is lay his hot top.
Okay.
What the town doesn't want to do is have to pay a paving company to come in and do a finish, shoot the pool on it, finish grade. And what we're looking to do is to clean up the verbiage in it. The verbiage needs to say that Benjamin Builders is doing a finish grade.
Okay.
Which I wrote in my response letter, that's why you can look at it, that the road would be brought up and finished grade would be completed prior to pavement installation. So again, it was just a clarification, as Wes had mentioned.
Okay. That's all I have on those issues. I know Carl is here. He probably wants to talk about the sewer fees.
Yeah, I was, well, the question is, we want to keep fees and dollars separate from the technical aspects. But my question would be to Carl, is there any of the technical aspects you would like to talk to that's relative to your sewers? And this is Carl Luck.
Yes, yeah. Yes, it is, Carl Luck. Yeah, the only one that I think becomes somewhat technical is the laterals. There was a question on laterals. I think it's resolved that laterals will be included on Pleasant View Ave, along with the sewer line. So I would put that into a technical category.
Yeah. Because do you have any comments relative to thoughts of Carl? Is there any issues? I just want to make sure we've touched all of the bases before we talk about finances.
No problem with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
The only other thing while I'm up here, which is I do know that the DPW director did propose or request, I'm not sure formally or not, a resident engineer for this job, which kind of goes to the discussion earlier of how we're going to make sure that all of these requirements are really implemented. So the Sewer Commission would like to support a request for a resident engineer to be assigned to this project to make sure that, among other things, that in the area of the sewers, that it really does comply with the prints, and we don't depend upon the director of the DPW to be spending his life there because he just can't afford to do that. So we would, the Sewer Commission would like to support any request and recommend that a resident engineer be assigned and funded by the developer.
Do you have comments, Dan, in his regard? In regard to his request, you're talking, specifically, what would you like?
We would like to request that a resident engineer be on site to do inspections and to make sure that all of the details of the construction are done per the prints and per the requirements.
Are we covered?
That's what we normally do as a condition. We require a civil engineering firm to inspect all the infrastructure that's built, roadway, drainage, sewer, water.
great.
Are you speaking of some specific person? Or?
No, not at all.
Yeah, I was just curious.
Just the function. We were just concerned, and I know in my discussions with the DPW director, he was concerned that, he may not be able to be there at all the right times.
So based on his response, Dan's response, that satisfies your question?
It sounds like it's covered.
Okay, so we'll save the discussion further to finances when we get to that subject matter.
No problem.
I don't know if we've cleared up all of the physical, technical aspects, Dan.
I think Mr. Haverty wanted to respond.
I just wanted a clarification when the discussion about a resident engineer, we're not talking about like a clerk of the works, because that's prohibitively expensive. If we're talking about periodic inspections by a peer review engineer, we don't have a problem with that. Although I think Gary would like to perhaps give some discretion to the DPW as to when such inspections are necessary. Perhaps having the DPW look at it first, and then if it feels it needs, an outside pair of eyes, then you would go and bring in the peer review engineer. I mean, we want to keep the costs down to the greatest extent possible. But we also want you to be comfortable with, what's going in there as well.
Well, yeah. So the question is, you want it independent and with respect to cost, but necessary in order to achieve the end product.
Correct. We don't want them to do any more than is absolutely necessary.
So that brings us, Dick, do you have a comment on the thought process that's coming out? In other words, you need technical people in order to do it. There's a cost associated with those technical people. Is it a question of what kind of technical people? Or are we just talking about observation by the building inspector to that level? It seems to me you can't.
Yeah, I was honestly looking at the decision, past decision, to see what the verbiage was around that condition to see whether it was adequate, and I haven't found it yet.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, Mr. Chairman, because I draft this condition in every decision that I issue. And Mr. Haverty can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure the condition that we had drafted was that a civil engineer hired by this board, but paid for through a deposit of funds that are made by the developer, would inspect the road and infrastructure at the appropriate intervals. And what we talked about is one of those intervals will be when the pipes are put in but not covered up to make sure that they're installed correctly.
And that doesn't seem at all unreasonable. I mean, I guess it's defining what those appropriate intervals are.
Gary, you look very anxious.
Well, it's just...
Because the money's coming out of his pockets as we speak.
Well, no, we respect your cost aspect.
I understand. What I'd like to do is, if we could, is put it in there that some of the inspections are real simple inspections where Jack might just say, you do a drive-by look at it, and it's kind of like a simple inspection that would be done that really may not need an engineer. But at any time that if Jack felt he wanted to defer to an engineer, we'd have no problem with that. So what he would then say is, I'd like Whitman and Bingham to do the inspection. At that point, we would call Whitman and Bingham. But we would first like to give first choice to Jack if he felt either he was overwhelmed with work and wasn't able to do it, or if it was something that he felt more comfortable having an engineer look at, that he'd have the option to choose. And we would be fine with that.
By Jack, you mean the
DPW,
the DPW and the sewer commissioners?
Correct. And the appropriate department would be doing the inspections.
So basically letting them set what the intervals are for those inspections.
If it was a simple inspection, they felt as though they could handle it, and because it's what they do on normal inspections, then that they would do it. If they felt as though they didn't have the time, or they felt more comfortable with the engineer doing the inspection, then it would be totally up to them.
It'd be like the building inspector does building construction inspection, he passes through, and it's almost a walkthrough to say, did you do it right? But if things get out of control, then you might want to call in a civil engineer.
Well, there are inspections that they're very comfortable with making, that they do all the time.
Understand.
For all subdivisions. But when you get into these check dams and things like that, they might say, well, I'd rather have Whitman and Bingham do that, or they may just not have time to do it because they're understaffed, and I understand that, and then they say, please call Whitman and Bingham. So we have no problem with whichever way the inspector would like to have it done.
I presume that there is a standard practice that is done on conventional subdivisions as to when, the town bodies do the inspections and as to when the planning board would generally say, we want an outside engineer to review this work.
Dan, can you phrase the proper verbiage so to cover the concept that they're discussing?
We've already covered it. It's
already
conditions.
there.
It's condition C5. The zoning board or its agents may conduct periodic inspections during the construction of the project to ensure compliance with this decision, to state building code, and for consistency with generally accepted construction and engineering practices for the installation of roadways, stormwater management facilities, etc.
Yeah, we
well
have
written,
to
if
be
I might.
mindful that,
So that gives discretion, we hope you'll exercise it.
we have to be mindful that we've already approved. and
That's fine.
Right.
And
I think-
of course, it opens the door that we could sharpen our pencils a little bit,
But we have
one
no
way or
problem
the
with that
other.
verbiage.
Yeah, I understand.
Thank you.
And I just want to be clear that when we talk about a third-party engineer, we're not talking about the applicant's engineering firm. It would be an independent firm. It could be Ross Associates, it could be whoever the town generally uses. My observation is that I think this is very important when it comes to the drainage, particularly where you've got pipes that are underwater. And I think that's my biggest concern, is that those elements be done correctly.
If we could, we'd prefer to have a local engineer such as Whitman and Bingham, just because we wouldn't want to pay that traveling cost for somebody to come.
Well, we seem to be in harmony in that area because they're here and,
It makes the most sense.
yeah.
Thank you.
Just to give you,
By the way, that's only my comment, that's not the board's, they might disagree with what we just said.
just to give you a heads up, if you didn't realize this, our firm actually does the inspections for the planning board, so any subdivisions that go in town, we know what the planning board looks for, we know what type of inspections that we have to do, so we've coordinated that with them, no issues. As Gary had mentioned, periodically, the DPW takes care of that and looks at things such as if the pavement's going in or the finished grading is done. But typically, the utility work, our firm would get called out to do the inspections. And I wouldn't be there every day like a clerk of the works. I would just go periodically. So whether it's our firm or another one, there is already practice in town. And Gary, with experience in town developing, probably already has an idea of what that would be.
Okay.
So seems like a very reasonable approach.
Does
Go ahead.
Dan's
You got a
word,
question?
Well, no, it was a comment, it's kind of what Jesse had alluded to earlier, in his comments. It's a matter of working together with the developer for timing, so that they can proceed with that work and they get the inspections done in a timely manner. It doesn't have to be a clerk of the works.
We're on the same page
Yeah.
with them.
Yeah.
Okay.
does Dan's wording cover the appropriate frequency on that?
I may want to revisit that a little bit, especially when it comes to this issue that I'm concerned about. And we can discuss this in deliberations. I mean, there'll be plenty of time to really, sharpen the pencil on that.
But we certainly, if you wanted to make specific reference, to that one particular
Right.
instance, when they're putting those barriers in,
Right.
that those will be inspected,
Okay.
No problem with that.
You also may want to call out the sewer infrastructure. General infrastructure is addressed, but the sewer infrastructure, I guess, could be included in there, but it should be spelled out.
But all of that is standard procedure for us.
Yeah.
For us.
Okay.
Did we want to talk about the sewer issues now?
You want to talk about money?
Oh, sure.
Might as well talk about money.
Do we want to let...
The town is broke, and
Do we want to let Mr. Luck go first and provide the sewer department's
we have,
perspective?
we as a board have no opinion in terms of finances, one way or another, I guess, but we have to bear with the realities of life,
I understand.
if they're so justified. Mr. Luck.
Thank you, Mr. Bowen. Yes, the sewer commission met on this issue and in our deliberations, we did have input from council, from Dan Hill, in terms of any special considerations for 40B projects. We did send a memo in, and rather than read the whole memo, I'm just going to summarize the key points, of which I'm glad to say I believe 80% are in agreement with the developer. But I would like to preface it again that this is based on legal input for 40B and special conditions for this 40B project, such as the agreement to sewer Pleasant View Ave. So there are certain concessions that we're making and standing behind for that as well. So in summary, if we just go through the three key issues. On the connection fees, the Sewer Commission is in agreement with the fee as it was stated in the original agreement, that the connection fees would be $1,760, and that would apply to all of the units, 80, I guess, at current, but however many units there are, we would expect that full connection fee to be applied, and not the new one that became effective in July. So we would revert to the old one. On the second, on the inflow and infiltration fee, which is a new fee that flowed down to us from the state through Leominster, we agree that that fee would not be applied to this project because of the date that the fee was implemented and the guidance we got from council regarding when fees get set for 40B. So we are no longer looking for that I&I fee. We call it inflow and infiltration fee. So there'll be no fee there. And then the last one, and I think the only one, hopefully the only one that is not in full agreement, is the privilege fees. In the original agreement, there were 16 units waived for privilege fees. Again, in concession for the Pleasant View sewering. We still agree and stand by that agreement for waiving 16 units. I believe the developer has requested an additional 4 units be waived, and we are not in agreement with that and would not recommend that the zoning board.
So you're saying that's fresh and new, and there's no, the deal is done on the others.
Correct.
The deal is done. You can't embed this new issue, the other ones, into the old deal, unless there's something on the table that we don't know about.
There you go. Exactly. The 16 was because of Pleasant View Ave, and there is no new concessions being made or discussions about any concessions. So we still would expect only 16 of the 80 units, if that's what it maintains, to be waived per the original agreement, and not the additional 4 as requested by the developer.
Okay.
Unless, of course, the zoning board makes a different decision, but we would suggest and encourage the board not to do that. And then I mentioned before just that the laterals are put in on Pleasant View Ave to each of the lots, right up to the landowners or the homeowners.
I didn't hear your last point, please.
This last point is on the laterals for Pleasant View Ave, where they're sewering Pleasant View Ave, and it wasn't explicit in the original agreement, but I believe there is agreement, as we said before,
Yeah, we agreed to that.
that those laterals would be there. So that's where we stand on fees.
Okay, we'll hear the other side of the story.
Thank you. I want to start with a question because I honestly don't remember, though I think I know what the answer is. I can't recall if the connection fees were also waived for the affordable units originally, and if they were, I don't want to give that up. If they weren't, I'm not asking for it now. So
Just a moment. Why don't you both stand here and talk right here, right together? And so if you got a question, maybe he can answer it right there.
Do you recall?
No, there was no waiver of any connection fees.
Okay, and if that's the case, we're not asking for it now. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't giving it away. All the other fees that Mr. Luck had stated, we're in agreement on. The $1,760 for the connection is fine. We are requesting the waiver of the 4 additional affordable units on the privilege fees. We understand that the Sewer Commission is disagree with that, and we'll just leave it up to the discretion of the board as to what you want to do. We're not going to belabor the point.
Okay. And the base reference point, to understand both sides, try to get a level playing field, is, I'm repeating, that the waivers that were done before under the original project was done because there was certainly considerations that was beneficial to both sides.
Yep.
So this one here, there's it's new and it's different and it's got a price, and why wouldn't, I beg the question, why would you yield when the sewer department depends upon every precious dollar they get to maintain their issues, and what's in it, and if it is if it is what it is, it's a cost, why not? And can you, put that into some context?
I can certainly, make the argument to you as a policy matter in favor of the creation of affordable housing. It's not unusual for applicants to request waivers of fees on affordable units.
Why not?
Excuse me?
I say, why not?
And we're very appreciative of the fact that the Sewer Commission has worked with us last time and did agree to that. And there was obviously back and forth in our agreement to do the work on Pleasant View. We understand the Sewer Commissioner's position, and like I said, I don't think we need to belabor the issue. We've asked for the waiver, and the Sewer Commissioners have given their input. And I think perhaps to a certain extent, some of the deliberation on this issue can occur, after the hearing's been closed and the board looks at the numbers and makes their determinations. We'd love to have it, but we don't.
I understand.
I'm not going to stand here and stomp my feet about it either.
I just wanted to make sure we air it out,
Yep.
so that we understand.
What is the number? How much are we talking about for those 4 units?
Oh, how much is the privilege?
$46,000, right?
46,000, okay.
Okay, so that put a cap on this? All right.
And are there any other issues we needed to discuss?
What other issues are we, what are we dealing with? Dick, am I off course here, or is the ship sailing properly?
I think we're right on schedule.
Okay, where do you think is next? I've probably got lost. I was so enthralled with all the wonderful conversation.
I'm not aware of anything else that we need to present.
Councilor spoke on the issue. We'll get back there for sure. Sewer commissioners have spoke, civil engineers, peer review has been discussed. We seem that we get a lot of common understanding, and hopefully, maybe I just refer to the board. Does the board have any questions? We heard, yeah, does anyone on the board want to expand on this subject matter?
Are we going to go through these waivers?
Pardon?
Are we going through these waivers, or does that come later?
Well, we could do when should we appropriately do the waivers?
Jesse's peer review memo did address
Pardon?
waivers. Correct, Jesse?
I went through the waivers, but I don't think the board has yet.
Yeah.
I did go through the waivers as well.
So maybe if you want to discuss that, your peer review of the waivers.
If you want, I can go through that now.
Well, we'll get there. We'll get
Yeah,
there.
there's not a lot to it. I mean,
Pardon?
there's not a lot to the waivers. There's really only one new
Okay.
waiver of even minor significance.
Well, let's hear about the waivers. We want to make sure we got enough, because remember, we're coming into the decision time in November 13.
Sure.
So it seems that way. So we need to wring everything out the best we can.
Okay.
Have it summarized by council, I think would be appropriate.
I was given a document, updated waiver request dated 9/25/13, and it did a good job of clarifying the previous waivers that were granted on the application, and if there was any modification to those waivers as a result of the requested modification to the project. And looking through those, I didn't see any discrepancies. It all seemed accurate, and it actually looked like 2 of the waivers were related to allowing for on-site wells, which were going to be necessary for the project that got the most substantially impacted by this amendment. When it was just originally 5 houses, it wasn't going to have water extended to it, so it needed wells. But obviously, with the extension of the water service up to that project with the now 19 homes, those 2 waivers go away. So that they won't even need the 2 that were previously granted. The only new waiver that wasn't granted prior is in relation to depth to the drainage pipe, that it have at least 3 feet of cover over the top of the pipe. They had proposed 2 drain lines at least that were 1.3 and 1.5 feet of cover, and that has been done prior in previous practice in town. When it was done properly, they're going to provide the detail that I had requested and mentioned earlier tonight, and mentioned in my review. If that detail gets put on the plan, then I feel comfortable if the board granted that waiver to the stipulation they asked for, the 1.3 feet of cover. And other than that, that's it. I had no issues with the...
So well, let's summarize the waivers. Those two, all of the others are fine.
Mm-hmm.
We get two that have been obsoleted by definition.
Right, and one new one that's just for cover over drain pipe, that's a subdivision waiver,
Okay.
subdivision design standard waiver, and I have no issue with that.
Okay, so...
So the 1.3 feet is, you're in agreement with that?
Yes.
So that's technical waivers. Now, the only thing left, unless someone backfills me with holes in my thought process, the other ones would be financial waivers. Is there any other kind of waivers that we're playing with?
Well, the financial waiver that we requested was the waiver of the privilege fees.
Oh, yeah.
Affordable units.
Yeah, but there's no other.
That's it.
That's the only issue on. So in other words, if we review where the technical waivers are agreed upon not from the board, but from you folks out there. And then the financials of what we just discussed.
And it's entirely...
There are no other waivers. I'm going to go and refer to Dan Hill to see if he has any recollection. Dan?
I don't have any comments on the waivers. The only question I had, I guess, was for Jesse, that I understand there's only one new waiver, but in terms of the waivers that were already granted that deal with a spectrum, such as like the subdivision rules and regs have a regulation that says you can't have a grade that exceeds a certain percentage. I'm assuming that there's nothing in this new section of the project that increases what was already been waived.
Right.
In other words, and I'm just using this as an example, the grade of 5.6% was allowed for Rogers Way. I'm assuming there's no grade that exceeds 5.6% in the new road.
No, I don't recall anything. Wes would be able to speak on that better, but no, I looked at generically the waivers that were requested and granted before. There were none that were really a big concern. I could see why the board granted them. Okay. And I felt that the design as submitted was substantially the same type of design. There was nothing that went beyond the standard design guidelines that I would see as a red flag.
Okay.
Dick, do you have any comments?
No, Mr. Chairman.
No comments. I think we've, do you feel, I'll ask you the question since you have so much expertise. Do you think that we've wrung this out reasonably well in terms of what we need to gather to look at the expansion of this project?
Yes, from my perspective, you have, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Does the board have any?
Mr. Chairman, if I could, the only omission right now is just I think we need some more data on the projected sale prices for the homes, and it just, if you remember at the last meeting, I had brought this up, and we talked about how you came up with the sale prices for each of the style units, and you were going to provide some more information.
The only difference that we have between the prices between the 6 different styles ranges from a maximum, I believe, is $10,000, which ranges from, you might add a farmer's porch, which would add $7,000 to the price of the house. One style has a little eyebrow over the roof line, which adds $500. There are turned roof lines that are added to these homes because, as I said, the inside of the homes remain the same. Okay. It's the jacket that you put on it. So if you put a farmer's porch on, you're going to add 7. If you put a 2x8 jog on it, you're going to add 5. If you add extra roof lines, you add anywhere from $1,500 to $3,500. So if you take those multipliers and plug them into each different style, you get no more than a variation of, I believe, it's 10,000.
That's fine. I just we need to see that. I'd like you to just put that on paper so we can. Okay. I mean, what you're saying right now is sinking in, but I'm going to forget it in a day. So
sure.
If you can.
It's like we forgot to get it to you.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, just
well,
run down.
Put it on paper.
Run down what you mean by each style.
Sure.
If one style is the same as the other, except for farmer's porch.
What I'll do is I'll take a picture of the style home and a price of it. The base price, then the add-on prices that bring it to the final number.
Yeah.
So I'll give you 6 different pictures with 6 different prices.
Okay, but explain why
it'll be
what's different.
There's not much breakdown. It's going to say,
it's fine.
Because they all come with the base 1632.
I understand.
They're all the base, and then it's only the added prices to it are just the exterior jackets.
Okay.
So if you have the 2x8 jog, it has a number. If you have a farmer's porch, it has a number. bumps on the roof, has a number. So
Perfect.
the numbers are slight, and you're not going to have more than $10,000 difference in the price.
Okay, so what you'll give me is just a summary of what you just said for each style.
Sure.
And the comps are the same then for each one? The comparative sale analysis
Yes,
that
so
you
if
gave
you
us
take off,
is the
because
same
we
for
always
each-
start with the base house.
Strip it down to the base. and
We
then-
strip it right down to the base. So if you take off the farmer's porch,
Yep.
if you take off the 2x8 jog,
Okay.
you're always going to get down to that base colonial home.
Right.
And it's all going to be the exact same price per square foot if you
Okay.
take the extras off.
Okay.
So, and the insides will have custom cabinets, return island bar, everything remains the same toilets, same tubs, same everything. Blue board skim coat plaster, same way we insulate, everything inside, and the floor layout is exactly the same. It's just the cosmetic look of the outside, the exterior elevation.
Except, and that goes back to affordable housing, that by the way, I like the way you presented it, and it's kind of neat, it's packaged well.
Thank you.
As you presented it. I always wonder if cutting corners on the affordables comes to my mind. We'll give them second class here versus premier class there.
They all have
So
the-
my question to you is the baseline, since you're modular, is that the interior cabinets, et cetera, are
Exactly the same.
base. But if I've got a lot of bucks, I hit the lottery,
There isn't anything we can't do with your
I
money.
can overlay,
That's how.
there you go. We can overlay that cost so that the rich guy has a rather fancier construction than the, not construction, constructions we agree is the same, as anemones,
Yes.
it's better.
But even the rich guy can choose a standard home.
Yeah.
Many do.
But is the breakout position is that everything's standard, and the exception is the rich guy?
No, the exception is.
Just trying to understand it.
But everything, we start with a standard spec, always start with a standard spec sheet, and in our opinion, our standard spec sheet has many upgraded amenities, which would have the stoned footings, the continuous concrete footing. It would have custom cabinets. It would have granite countertops in your kitchen and granite countertops in your bathroom. It would have blue board skim coat plaster. So all of those things are standard. You'll have 88-inch studs on the first floor, but yet you'll have 8-foot studs on the second floor, giving you a taller stud height. That's standard and affordable. That's standard in market. The only difference is the discriminating buyer that says, "Hey, I want a gold fixture, solid gold." You can have a solid gold
Okay.
fixture.
I
And
just-
even if the affordable customer comes in and Uncle Joe says, "You know what, I'd like you to have an oak floor in that room." The affordable customer can have an oak floor just like the market value. Whoever wants to pay can have an upgrade.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting. I just wanted to kind of protect the thought with respect to the affordable person. By the way, I was out of town, and in the hotel, I was prepping to come home here to this wonderful meeting, and the TV was on. I sleep sometimes, I forget to turn it off, and the doctors were on. And the doctors were saying about the real problem with granite surfaces, the radon, that you could be sitting here having a cup of coffee on your beautiful radon marble granite top, and have 450 radones or whatever the hell they call it.
You need to change the channel.
I just thought I'd pass it on, it was free information.
Put a raincoat over with a duck and you're all set.
Interesting.
So we have nothing else to present tonight.
It's funny how a subject comes up, and it comes up 2 times in a lifetime. It'll never come up twice in the same conversation. Anyway, members of the board, what do we need? Hey, we got anything further to say? Yes, no? We happy?
Yes, I am.
We got enough? Everybody got enough? Okay. Dick, do you have any further comments?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Hill?
No, sir.
Okay. No folk, I guess we're ready to,
Neighbors, any butters?
pardon?
Any comment?
Oh, yeah, excuse me, they sit here all day long, and I apologize. We will open it up for public discussion. I apologize profusely I was too involved with granite slabs.
I just had a couple of questions. Sue Bunish, 30 Pleasant View Avenue. We just, on the street, I can't find where I put them. One thing we were concerned about is when the clearing was going to be done on the phase that we're on, and because we didn't want to see.
Would you put it yourself in context physically with the with where you're coming from?
You mean where I live?
Yeah. In other words, based on you're commenting. You in Lunenburg or you're in?
I'm in Lunenburg. Yes, I'm on Pleasant View Ave in Lunenburg.
I want to put the conversation in context.
Okay, so we're just concerned because we do have a lot of water, and we're under the impression that maybe once the project is done, we might even benefit from not having so much water, groundwater, and issues with water in our basements and on the street, and sewer, obviously, issues. But we did have a concern with when the land was going to be cleared up above us, and we were hoping that it wouldn't happen until the structures were going to be built, so we wouldn't have that extra water issue because all the foliage and trees, whatever, is gone up there.
You're looking for a timetable?
Well, we're just looking for, I don't have to know when it's going to be built. I just would like to know that the work won't be done until it's ready to be built.
That's
In other words, you
That'll be our third phase. We don't. That will be our third phase. So our intention is to do the work in the larger portion of the subdivision, and once we're substantially done that section, then is to move over to the third phase, clear it, and then put the road in.
So I think if I understood you correctly, then the answer is that no, it will not be cleared in advance of doing the work, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
So that's your question, right?
Right, that was one of the questions. Another question we had was about the traffic, and really not comfortable with the way the road is, either roads are constructed and the size of them. And I know in my home, I have a small home, but we have 3 people living in it. They all have vehicles, and I have a 1-car wide driveway. So oftentimes we have cars on the road, and the mailman is fine because I give him really good gifts on the holidays. But it's an issue, and we're worried, and I remember someone saying, well, you could put up no parking signs, but we don't live in the city of Boston, and why should we have to worry about not being able to park in front of our homes? And also, buses are an issue. We've never had school buses come up our road. We've always walked the kids down the road, and we're wondering how that's going to work. School buses up on that end. And I'm thinking the best solution is they only come up and down Pleasant View because that's the better road, and that's a lot. Because I don't know if you've ever seen that corner on Piedmont. I know traffic can't get out 2 ways, can't get in and out at the same time on Piedmont. So I can't even imagine a bus making that corner.
Has that become a school issue with the school
I don't know who
directors or
determines
principals in terms of flow? You might
the bus
add a thought on the matter. In other words, there's going to be children and there's going to be buses.
That's something that's within the discretion of the school department.
Yeah.
If one road is better than the other, I mean, it appears that what they could do is come up and, do a loop within our site and go back down the same road, if that's the preference of the school committee. If one is, substantially safer than the other, I think that's what they would do. There's certainly a room available for them to do that.
They have to be concerned, it would seem the school department would have to be concerned about the flow and so forth with children involved.
Right.
We don't have
would have to be ready to.
We have no control, but yet they do have more options and better options.
This is my thought process.
And when you talk about safety too, the fire safety issue is also a concern. We don't have even a hydrant on our road. The nearest one is almost a half a block away. And I know someone said, well, if you can't access by one, you could go the other. But you've got a fire truck coming up the road and then realizing they have to back all the way down and go around.
Well,
It's a little scary.
And that's another benefit that this provides as well, I think we discussed before.
I'm sorry,
That's okay.
the fire department has responded, and we should look at their response and how you folks have accommodated that. Well, go ahead, you will go.
Well, what this does, it actually provides an additional level of safety in that because Pleasant View and Piedmont Avenues are both, dead ends and not necessarily the most easily accessible, if one or the other is blocked now, the fire department could come up, do the loop on our road and get back, to the blocked road from the other direction.
So you're saying you're enhancing that position?
Correct. It's essentially turning them from a single access to a multi-access road.
Does that make sense to you?
It does. My only issue is, how do you know there's an obstruction in the road until you have a fire truck going up the road and they can't get in? That's my only concern.
Well,
and I understand maybe there isn't anyone here that can do anything, but I'm just voicing our concerns as residents in a tight area.
They
already.
responded, and they didn't seem to have difficulties with what was proposed, as I recall. You're doing a what-if kind of scenario.
Well, I think because of what Attorney Hill had said, that, was it, I don't know, someone had said it didn't meet safety standards, but it could be overridden because of the project. So to me, if it doesn't meet safety standards, it's a concern.
I don't recall, subject to you correcting me or someone correcting me, that the fire department has said that it's not meeting safety standards.
I thought the traffic...
I don't recall that.
I can clarify. She is correct in saying that I had reported that the roadway width is not up to National Fire Safety recommended standards. They recommend 24 feet clear width, and the road varies anywhere from 18 to 20.
Well, that is what it is.
Right, that's what the conclusion was, and I think that's what she meant by Attorney Hill stating that it's an existing condition that the board doesn't have the discretion to force the applicant to improve that existing standard or non-standard.
I think we've been over that. I think we've been over that in the first approval.
Mr. Chairman, can I just get some clarification on the water issue? So my understanding is that the applicant is going to be upgrading the water line in Pleasant View. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, and in doing so, that should improve the water pressure on Pleasant View, correct?
Currently, they have a 2-inch main, and so it will be increased. And currently, because of the 2-inch main, it prohibits them from having any fire hydrants. So there are 0 fire hydrants, which in this case, there will be 2 in place of 0. And you'll have much greater pressure as well, because you're tying it into, I think, Summers 12-inch. And then your main going up, yeah, so you're going from a 12-inch main coming up to Pleasant View in an 8-inch, and then right into our subdivision with an 8. So in theory, if there was a big fire, you could go from Pleasant View or come into the subdivision and even take it down Piedmont, although Piedmont will not have the increases or the upgrades. They can still go with this greater pressure, adequate main size, and then go down gradient with it, attaching a truck onto it and pump down.
So Piedmont has an existing water line.
But I believe it's 2-inch.
2-inch.
Is that correct?
And
1.5 or 2.
And that's not going to be connected to your project, right?
That's correct.
So so you're not changing Piedmont's line at all?
No, we're not.
And your line is going to just loop around and just basically be like a lollipop loop at the top?
Correct.
And where are the hydrants going to be? Are they on the plan?
Just off the plan. And so what we were looking at is...
Don't go away.
Just basically one to the left of what the plan shows there, and then one at the intersection of, I believe it's what, Graham Street and Pleasant View, where Pleasant View connects onto Graham Street, is where we're looking at a connection there, if that's the way the water ends up coming up. And so what we've been doing is we've been talking to the Lunenburg Water Department and the Leominster Water Department about servicing water to this part of the development.
Ultimately, hydrant locations will be
up to the fire departments, and also the water department has some say in, valve locations and hydrant locations, so.
Okay, so right now you're proposing 2 on Pleasant View.
Correct.
What about within your project?
I believe there's either 2 or 3 additional. I'd have to count them off.
Okay, I'm just...
But we do have some in the project also.
Okay. And is the cost of installing the 2 hydrants on Pleasant View, is that also borne by the applicant?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Who maintains them after they're installed? I know there's an annual fee the town pays for the...
For that system, if it comes up in that direction, it would be the Leominster Water Department would actually own that water system.
See, we're trying to go, whether we do the deal with Leominster or Lunenburg Water District feels it's more advantageous for them, they may make an alternate route to connect to Lunenburg if they feel as though they could, for instance, create a loop, something like that. So we still need to iron it out with Lunenburg, whether Lunenburg would like to take the water, or we know Leominster has already agreed to take the water. So we can go Leominster or we can go Lunenburg, and if the Lunenburg Water Districts, I would think they would have first preference, if they had came up with a situation that would help the water department but not cost us any more money, we would certainly work with Lunenburg in any way they wanted us to.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Okay, Ben, I just
We wouldn't let you go. You're trying to get away.
You should have let me. No, I just have one other concern, and again, it's just a concern because the neighborhood and we have a lot of time and money invested in it. The agreement with the sewer line to come up Pleasant View Avenue is contingent on the waivers, but we're wondering, if the waivers start to happen in the other side of the project, I forget what they're called, whether it's the north or whatever.
Wait a minute, so that we understand clearly, you forget what you call it. Let's find out.
Okay, the larger project, the original one, the one you haven't changed.
East side.
The east side project. If construction starts over there and there's buildings constructed that the waivers are going to be used for, we're wondering when that sewer line on Pleasant View kicks in, if it's part of the agreement.
You mean sometime in the calendar future?
I don't need a date.
When they're going
I'm
to
just-
build, in other words, they're going to start building in accordance with the market, and then you're saying how long is that project going to last? Is it 10 years from today before they put the last building in? I don't know.
Okay,
But you may have a general...
Yeah, it's the last phase. The sewer's in the last phase, and we don't know. That's going to be driven on the market. So those will be the last homes that we will build, and we will put the sewer in at that time.
One could imagine that it probably won't happen in 2 calendar years.
No, not the way things are going. I'd say no, certainly not 2 calendar years. I wouldn't think so.
She's looking for a feel, I think.
I think I'm just looking for, if the plan goes into effect, does it all go in at once, or it's something we have to wait for that part, even though the waivers are included in
I think
the
that
line?
what he just said is you have to wait for that part.
Okay.
Yeah, but the
That's what I asked.
waivers run with the project. So whether we did it in year 1 or year 8, they run with the project. So they're still applicable for that 3rd phase.
Okay,
If that answers, I'm not.
yes, that's fine.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank
Any
you.
further public discussion? And if not, I think the chair is ready to accept a motion to...
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Before you do that, if the board is considering closing the hearing at the next session, there was one outstanding issue that we haven't dealt with, and that was, I think, Mr. Lorden's request that the land that he was going to set aside for the town next to the ball field, and there was a question of whether or not, and you can probably state this a lot more eloquently than I can, but I believe the DPW had asked for a parcel of land.
No. What I had mentioned was that the Lunenburg Water District had brought it up, and then I brought it to the board, and they had no interest in it. So we kept it status quo. Same as, just as we originally submitted it.
Yeah. And
So we're not changing that? The board doesn't want to change that?
Pardon?
The board does not want to change the condition that was in the prior...
Well, I might, let's open it up to the board. The chair will...
I wouldn't want it to hold up the board closing the hearing, so I would submit it as...
Well, my only comment, Gary, was that you know, if, between now and the next hearing, you may want to write a letter to the Water District and the Recreation Department and the Selectmen and just say, look, this is on the table. If you have any opinion on this, send it to us before the next hearing.
I have absolutely no problem with it. I'd like to do what's best in the best interest of the town.
Yeah, but
And I'd love to work with the town on it.
I'd like to open it up right now, as the chair would like to entertain a motion to discuss the matter right now. I think it's appropriate. It's either yes or no.
Sure.
So the chair will entertain a discussion on...
Could I give a brief summary of what they were looking to do?
Go ahead.
Previously, as you entered from Whalum Road, there's roughly 3/4 of an acre here, which would equivalent to about 3 building lots in this area right here. The Lunenburg Water District has interest in building a garage, and they would like to trade to take and put homes on these lots. And in return, we didn't discuss which lots, but I would assume something like 1, 2, 3, and take this land and make it part of the Lunenburg Water District and have it so that they could have a larger parcel to put an outbuilding on, maybe for trucks, or I'm not sure what the intent is for, but to do something like that. And there are some benefits to that, as they've done in towns like Townsend, where before the deed was transferred, the developer may construct a barn or construct a garage at reasonable dollars as opposed to prevailing wages. So there's a benefit to doing something like that, and that's kind of the thought process, whereas it would save the Lunenburg Water District a great deal of money. They would attain a larger lot, and therefore reap some great benefits that would be good for them for the long term.
So,
But there's a trade-off there.
The trade-off would be is that you no longer have this as recreational area incorporated with the ball field here, or parking, or whatever they chose to use it for. So the negative would be recreation would lose, water would win, or recreation remains reaping the benefits of it, and water is sad.
yeah, but the sweetener on the original agreement was kind of a real nice thing to do for the benefit, and you champion the kids.
Sure, I love that.
There's going to be a playground included.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was in the deal.
Yes.
And we gave up the granite curbing. That was the
Right.
trade-off.
Correct.
Right. I personally would not be in favor of this, Mr. Chairman.
In favor of the water.
I want to
department.
leave it the water deal. I wanna
And just
leave
so
it
that the
way
board knows, I have no problem either way. I just want to see what's best for the town,
understand.
and the town would be happiest with.
I understand. So, we got you making that in form of a motion for the discussion?
I think to make a motion, we'd have to change it. I think leave it the way it is, Mr. Chairman, so I don't know
Well, make
why.
a motion to leave it where it is.
I'll make a motion to leave it the way it is.
Mr. Chairman,
We haven't brought it up, it's only theoretical.
You don't need to decide this tonight. I only raised it because if you wanted to solicit the opinions.
But if we go next week, we're gonna make a snap decision if this is in the decision process. Dick, do you have any comments in terms of the procedural?
I think the point Dan's making, which I agree with, is you don't have to make that decision tonight. You could, but you don't have to make it tonight.
But I also agree with Dan's suggestion that we really should ask the Recreation Department, the Water Department, and the Selectmen for their input. It's on the table. We should have their input.
I agree.
It won't hurt. It'll just add more information.
I have no
There may
problem
be
with
something that we're not looking at.
that. Okay.
If you feel you need more input, then you should not close the hearing until you get that input.
But I would suggest that if the board was inclined to close the hearing tonight, I would love to see it just go as it is.
You could also go close it with the exception of the input on that one issue.
I love what you're saying. Who wants a hug, because I'm coming up right now.
He's going to change his mind then. It seems to me, Mr. Chairman, it's a settled issue. Why bring it up?
Okay.
The Water District is not a town entity, other than it shares the name of Lunenburg.
Understand. So, Dick, procedurally, shall we, how shall we handle this meeting? Shall we, are we ready to close these
We
hearings?
have one more coming before we do that.
Yeah, you don't have to close the hearing this evening. If you wanted to move it forward, you could, but you don't have to. You could ask Dan to start writing the decision, and at the next hearing, you could review the decision and handle any of these issues in the context of reviewing the total decision. It's pretty much up to the board as to what you'd like to
That seems
do.
appropriate. Dan, your comment?
Yeah, and I think that also would allow for the applicant to see the draft decision, be able to provide comments while the hearing is still open, and that's frankly a lot cleaner to do that while the hearing is still open than having comments come in after the fact.
So you're saying to continue the meeting, this meeting to the next
Yeah,
time?
I would continue the hearing for another 4 weeks or whatever you would
Yeah,
do.
until
And in
the-
the meantime, I'll start drafting a decision, which I can circulate to Mr. Haverty for comments, if you'd like. And in the meantime, if you'd like, either I or Lisa can send a letter to those boards asking for any additional input on this land issue.
Okay, so it seems appropriate that we continue the meeting, and then when we continue it to the 13th, at that point in time, I'll give you a minute.
Can you have a draft decision by then? Dan?
Pardon?
By November 13th?
13th, yeah.
I have another hearing that night.
Pardon?
Is there any chance of doing it a different night?
You have another one?
Yeah,
I
why
have a hearing
would,
in Groton on the 13th.
When? On the 13th?
13th.
why would
You
we
don't
go
have
into the
to-
13th instead of the 4th Wednesday?
Lisa,
Thank
Lisa,
Yeah.
we're talking to you. What about he's questioning the 13th?
The next available meeting is the night before Thanksgiving. We
Oh.
never
Oh,
meet the
okay.
night before Thanksgiving.
There's a lot more fun things to do than this.
So
Stuff
then
a
we're
turkey.
December.
The 27th?
Well, did you want to go on without me?
So the concept
I don't know what
would
that
be
schedule is.
to continue this meeting, then close the meeting on the front end of whatever time we meet again.
I always hate to hear this, but
Pardon?
Gary is saying he doesn't think it's a problem if I'm not here. I never like to hear that, but
Yeah,
if it has to be the 13th, would rather do that than push it back an extra
Yeah.
month. And I'll see if I can get Ted Rignante from my office to
Okay.
cover it. I just don't know what his schedule is right now.
So what do we say in here,
Well,
you take over, give us a roadmap.
I was waiting to hear, Dan was hesitating on the timing of this. 13th is cutting his time short for doing the draft.
It's, it's a lot of work in a short period of time, but, as long as Paul gives me an extension on our Woburn case, I'll be fine.
I haven't even given you the pre-hearing order yet. I'm going to get that to you tomorrow, by the way.
Oh, okay.
Paul and I have another case together, so, I can make it work.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so we continue this meeting, close the meeting when we meet on the 13th, after the due discussion, and deliberate for a decision, the same, all in one package. Is that correct?
Yes.
That looks like the way we're going to go.
Okay.
Sure.
If I'm going to take a motion from the board, but...
Mr. Chairman, could I ask the board to give me some direction in terms of whether or not you want an approval with conditions or a denial?
Yeah, both.
Is
Well,
there anything left? With
If you want me to
regards
draft two decisions, it's going to take more than 3 weeks.
With regards to the 4 additions up on the east side, for east property, I know there've been questions in there about drainage and so forth into Leominster and Stewart Air. Have we resolved any of the issues on that?
I don't believe there's any outstanding issues with that. I think because they talked about vegetation, the vegetation has completely grown back on the east side. There's grass, there's vegetation everywhere. And I think a lot of the problems occurred through I don't know if it was the second or the third rainiest June on record, where everybody was having a problem. And if you have a groundwater problem and you get a situation like that, it's going to make itself worse. So I don't think there's any outstanding issues with that. And that portion of the project is still approved from prior before. Really, there are no changes to that. Everything, the changes are made on the west side.
Except for the 4 extra units.
Except for two extra units. It's 2 extra units on the west side.
And the peer review, Jesse did look at that issue and said that there were no stormwater concerns, correct?
Correct, yeah, it's negligible too.
Yeah. I have a question, Dan. Are you asking right now to get a sense of the board of approval or denial?
Yeah, I think we're at a point where, since you've collected all the information you're going to collect, except for a few remaining things.
Those issues are, one would be approval, but denial of waivers on the sewer. And the other one would be approval and granting the waivers. It seems to me,
No.
are there any other issue? In other words, is that what we're talking about? You're going to write all the conditions, what we've gone through, we've wrung everything out.
Yeah, there's going to be some areas where I'm going to leave some blanks that need to be filled in. And in the past, what I've done is maybe there's two potential approaches to an issue, and I'll lay out both of those approaches, and you can deliberate on them. But I think what I'm asking for is if it's appropriate to poll the board tonight as to whether or not you want me to draft an approval with conditions or an outright denial. And I mean, I haven't heard any discussion so far that a denial is something that the board members are looking at. So I'm not saying this binds you, I'm just saying, because you may decide next month that you want to deny it, but for purposes of my work, that's like double the amount of work for me to draft 2 decisions.
Well, the 3 things that sit in my mind is denial. The other one is approval.
Let's try to get that first one out of your mind.
And then the other one's approval with denial of waiver of the money for the sewer. And then the third one, where you could imagine the board could go, or anybody could go, that you want 16 and say, hey, remember the old days when you turn around and you'd ask for 250 and then flip it over and go for 140 for the number of units, the flip card? We could say, instead of 16, we'll give you 8 and go away and be happy. And then you could turn around and make the decision to march us off to Never Never Land downtown. So those are the issues that are before us.
I might be a little bit confused. So are you suggesting perhaps with regard to the 4 extra units, there might be some compromise in there? A split of that? 2 units rather than 4?
No, yeah. In other words,
are you suggesting we're going to actually have less waiver than we already have? Because I don't like that compromise.
Those are the issues. That's what you could reasonably put on the table and say that what kind of decisions could you come to? So do you want 16, you can have 8.
I think there's a few more, Mr. Chairman, but I don't think it means I think there's actually a few more debatable issues and conditions that we've talked about. And I think it's probably better for me to lay out all of them for you for next time. And
because we could do the sense of the board right now. I mean, I've got an opinion.
I would just
ask me for my opinion right now?
I'd like to hear.
Really, all I want to know is, do you want me to draft a denial or not? Because if you do, a denial outright. Not denial of waivers, but a denial of the entire project.
Well, okay, we'll open up to the board for their opinion. We'll pull on that one. What about a straight denial? Are we ready to talk?
I'm ready to make an opinion, give my opinion.
Of a straight denial?
No.
Okay, well, that's the
My
question.
opinion is that we asked Dan to draft conditional approval with those conditions. And in the case where there's alternatives, then we can discuss that.
I agree.
Yeah, a flat, straight-out denial is not on my calendar.
Okay.
I'm glad to hear that.
So that's 2. How about you guys?
I'm with Dan, I like what he just said.
Okay. All right, that's fine, Mr. Chairman. We have a sense of the board. I'm going to draft an approval with conditions, leaving alternatives for the issues that are still outstanding.
Okay. So, so then get my brain straight here. We're going to continue this meeting
Right.
And then when we meet on the 13th, present company maybe, but
Only if my other hearing gets
that,
continued.
we will come to a
Mechanical.
cutoff of the hearing, stop the hearing, and come to the decision process, right? Okay.
Great.
With that, the chair will accept a motion
So
to
moved.
continue. Second?
Second.
Pardon?
7 o'clock.
Oh,
7 o'clock.
7
on the
o'clock.
13th.
So this is continued to the 13th of next month at 7 o'clock.
I want to thank the board, too, for allowing us in, and all the consultants and the members. I appreciate you coming in, hanging in tight, and missing some of the Red Sox.
Oh,
A text from
And
my
I know
wife that
especially
says
for
they're
Danny,
winning
guys.
3-0.
you should have,
We're up 3-0? Already?
Yeah, Napoli hit a 3-run double.
What's that?
I got a text from my wife that said the Sox are up 3-0.
Napoli hit a 3-run double?
3-run double.
All right.
I must have, I must have won the lottery. I had this in my pocket on vibrate, and it's continually vibrated for 2 hours.
Thank you. My wife Heidi never goes to meetings. I had another one.